A CEO runs into a woman from his past and meets a child who resembles him. Could this child be his? And can they rekindle what was lost? And if you cherish your family and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. The grand ballroom of the Four Seasons Seoul buzzed with the city's elite, but Lee Jun-woo felt distinctly alone. He adjusted his bow tie, nodding mechanically at passing executives who sought his attention. As CEO of one of South Korea's leading tech companies, he'd attended countless such events, but tonight felt different. The crystal chandeliers cast familiar shadows, yet their light seemed colder, more isolating. Several board members approached him, discussing quarterly projections and market expansions. Jun-woo maintained his professional demeanor, offering concise responses while his eyes unconsciously scanned the room. He'd heard through business circles that his ex-wife might attend tonight's charity gala. The thought made his fingers tighten around his champagne glass. Mr. Lee, the communications director, would like a word, his assistant whispered, but Jun-woo had stopped listening. Across the room, through a gap in the crowd, he saw her. Kim Soo-yeon stood near the art exhibition section, her black evening gown contrasting sharply with the white marble pillars behind her. She was speaking animatedly with a group of art collectors, her hands moving gracefully as she explained something about the displayed pieces. 5 years hadn't changed her much. Her hair was shorter now, falling just above her shoulders instead of the long waves he remembered, but her eyes still crinkled at the corners when she smiled. That smile, it had once been his refuge after long days at the office. Now it belonged to strangers at a charity gala. Their eyes met across the room. The conversation around him faded into white noise as they held each other's gaze. Soo-yeon's smile faltered slightly, and she unconsciously touched the necklace at her throat, a nervous habit he remembered well. The 5 years between them seemed to compress into a single moment, heavy with unspoken words and regrets. Jun-woo excused himself from his group, intending to approach her, but the crowd shifted. When the path cleared again, Soo-yeon had moved to a different part of the ballroom. He followed, maintaining a professional facade while navigating through Seoul's business elite. Each step brought back memories, their first meeting at a similar event, their whirlwind romance, the quiet moments in their apartment overlooking the Han River, and finally, the painful silence of their last days together. Then he saw the boy. The child couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 years old, running between the guests with a toy car in his hand. He wore a miniature tuxedo, his black hair neatly combed but starting to rebel at the edges. Something about his profile made Jun-woo stop mid-step. The boy turned, laughing at something, and Jun-woo felt the air leave his lungs. It was like looking at his own childhood photos. The same sharp chin, the same curved eyebrows, even the way the boy's left eye crinkled more than his right when he smiled. It was all eerily familiar. Jun-woo watched, rooted to the spot, as the boy ran towards Soo-yeon, who scooped him up with practiced ease. "Min-ho-ya, be careful," she said, adjusting his bow tie. The boy, Min-ho, squirmed playfully in her arms, then looked directly at Jun-woo. Their eyes met, and Jun-woo felt a jolt of recognition that defied explanation. Min-ho tilted his head slightly, studying him with a curiosity that seemed beyond his years. The resemblance was undeniable. Jun-woo's mind raced through calculations. 5 years since the divorce. The boy's apparent age, the last time he and Soo-yeon had been together. His heart pounded against his ribs as he watched Soo-yeon set Min-ho down, whispering something in his ear that made the boy nod solemnly. The imp. Lications overwhelmed him. Could it be possible? Had she known? The questions multiplied in his mind, each one demanding immediate answers, yet threatening to shatter the careful peace they'd maintained since their separation. Back in his penthouse office the following morning, Jun-woo couldn't focus on work. His laptop screen displayed search results for Kim Soo-yeon Artist Seoul, tabs open to gallery websites and art magazine interviews. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing Min-ho into the search bar. Several social media posts appeared, showing the boy at art exhibitions, always by Soo-yeon's side. The timestamps on the photos revealed a pattern. Min-ho had first appeared in public with Soo-yeon about 3 years ago, but there were no earlier photos. No birth announcements, no baby pictures. For someone as prominent in Seoul's art scene as Soohyun, the absence of information was striking. Junwoo leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The timeline aligned perfectly with their separation, too perfectly to be coincidence. His office phone buzzed. "Mr. Lee, Park Hyun-suk is here to see you. Send him in." Junwoo replied, closing the browser tabs. Park Hyun-suk had been his friend since university, long before the success of his tech company. He was one of the few people who knew the full story of Junwoo's marriage and divorce. Hyun-suk entered, immediately noticing Junwoo's distracted state. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, settling into the chair across from the desk. "I saw Soohyun last night," Junwoo stated, watching his friend's reaction. "At the charity gala."
Ah.
Hyun-suk nodded slowly. "And she wasn't alone. There was a boy with her."
Minho.
Junwoo pulled up one of the photos he'd found. "Look at him, Hyun-suk. Really look at him." Hyun-suk studied the image, his eyes widening slightly. "The resemblance is striking. Have you asked her?"
How?
Junwoo stood, pacing behind his desk. "What am I supposed to say? Hello, is that my son you forgot to mention for 5 years?" His voice carried an edge of bitterness. "Actually, yes." Hyun-suk's direct response made Junwoo stop pacing. "You need to ask her."
Directly.
"No games, no corporate tactics. This isn't a business deal, Junwoo." "She could have told me," Junwoo muttered, more to himself than his friend. "If he's mine, she had every opportunity to tell me. Maybe she tried." Hyun-suk's words hung in the air. "You weren't exactly accessible during the divorce. How many times did you change your number? How many of her calls did you ignore?" The truth in those words stung. The final months of their marriage had been a blur of avoided conversations and missed calls. Junwoo had thrown himself into work, using his company's expansion as an excuse to stay away from home. By the time the divorce papers were signed, they'd barely spoken in weeks. "Her new gallery exhibition opens next week," Hyun-suk continued, sliding a glossy invitation across the desk. "She sent this to my office. I think she knew I'd give it to you." Junwoo picked up the invitation. The gallery was in Gangnam, not far from his office. The exhibition was titled Unspoken Truths. The irony wasn't lost on him. "I'll go," he decided, tucking the invitation into his jacket pocket. "Tomorrow. Before the opening. I need to know, Hyun-suk." "Just." Hyun-suk paused at the door, choosing his words carefully. "Remember that if he is your son, this isn't just about you and Soohyun anymore. Whatever happened between you two, that boy deserves better than to be caught in the crossfire of old wounds." After Hyun-suk left, Junwoo returned to the window, looking out over the Seoul skyline. 5 years ago, he'd stood in this same spot, watching the movers pack Soohyun's art supplies into a van. He told himself it was for the best, that they'd grown too far apart, that their worlds no longer aligned. Now, with the weight of possibility pressing down on him, he wondered how many other truths he'd chosen not to see. He pulled out his phone, found Soohyun's gallery number, and dialed before he could change his mind. Each ring echoed in his ears until finally, a familiar voice answered. Kim Soohyun speaking. The gallery space was quiet when Junwoo arrived the next afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating canvases in various stages of arrangement. Soohyun stood in the center of the room, directing assistants on hanging a large abstract piece. She wore simple black pants and a white blouse, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, the same way she used to dress when working in their home studio. "The lighting needs to be adjusted 3 degrees to the left," she instructed an assistant before turning to face Junwoo. "You're early." "The traffic was light," he replied, stepping further into the space. The gallery smelled of fresh paint and coffee, Soohyun's signature combination. She'd always claimed that coffee helped her see colors more clearly. "Would you like some?" she asked, gesturing to a coffee maker in the corner, reading his thoughts as she used to. "It's that Brazilian roast you liked." He nodded, and she dismissed her assistants with a quiet word. They moved around the coffee maker in awkward synchronization, muscle memory from years of morning routines fighting against their current reality. "Your work has evolved," Junwoo commented, looking at the paintings around them. The vibrant colors and bold strokes of her earlier work had given way to something more nuanced, more complex. Pain and healing captured in layers of paint. "Loss changes people," she replied simply, handing him a cup. "Art was my therapy after everything." She paused, studying his face. "But you didn't come here to discuss my artistic evolution." Junwoo's eyes were drawn to a particular painting. It showed two figures, their forms barely distinguishable in a swirl of blues and grays, reaching for each other across a divide filled with what looked like shattered glass. The title card read, "What Remains." "Is that us?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. It was. Soo-yeon moved to stand beside him, both facing the painting. "I painted it during the divorce. It helped me process things I couldn't say out loud." "And now? What helps you process things now?" She turned to look at him directly. "You saw Min-ho at the gala." "Yes." The coffee cup suddenly felt heavy in his hands. He looks exactly like my childhood photos." Soo-yeon's hand trembled slightly as she set her cup down on a nearby table. "He does, doesn't he? Is he mine?" The question came out more sharply than he intended. Silence filled the space between them. Soo-yeon walked to another painting, this one showing a small boy flying a kite against a stormy sky. "Yes," she finally answered. "He's your son." The confirmation hit Junwoo like a physical blow. He set his cup down before he could drop it. "How? Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried." Her voice was quiet but firm. "3 times. Once before the divorce was final, when I first found out. You were in Singapore, expanding the company. Your secretary said you were too busy for personal calls." Junwoo remembered that week, the endless meetings, the deliberate burial in work to avoid thinking about his crumbling marriage. The second time was at the divorce hearing. "I tried to speak to you privately, but you insisted on letting the lawyers handle everything." She moved to another painting, unable to stay still. The third time was a letter. "I sent it to your office 6 months after Min-ho was born. It came back unopened." Each revelation was a knife twisting in his gut. He remembered the letter. He'd seen her handwriting on the envelope and had his assistant return it unopened, thinking it was another attempt to discuss their failed marriage. "After that," she continued, "I decided that maybe it was better this W. You were building your empire. The papers called you the most eligible bachelor in Seoul. What right did I have to disrupt your life?" "What right?" Junwoo's voice rose slightly. "He's my son. I had a right to know him, to be there for his first steps, his first words." "Did you?" Soo-yeon's calm cracked slightly. "You couldn't even be there for our anniversary dinner the year before we divorced. How could I trust that you'd be there for a child?" The truth of her words hung heavy in the air, surrounded by the evidence of her pain transformed into art. Junwoo stared at the painting of the boy with the kite, recognizing Min-ho's features in the child's face. "Does he know about me?" he asked finally. "He knows you're his father. He's seen pictures. He asks about you sometimes." Soo-yeon's voice softened. "He has your curiosity, always asking questions, always wanting to understand how things work." The revelation hung in the gallery air like a physical presence. Junwoo gripped the edge of a nearby table, his knuckles turning white. "How many times?" he asked, his voice tight. "How many times did he ask about me?" "Every birthday," Soo-yeon replied, maintaining distance between them. "Every Father's Day. Whenever he sees your company's logo on buildings or advertisements. He's proud, you know. Tells his friends his father builds important things." Junwoo's chest tightened. "You should have tried harder to tell me. You should have come to my office directly, demanded to see me. Something. Anything. Like you tried harder to save our marriage?" The words came out sharp, surprising them both. Soo-yeon took a deep breath, steadying herself.
"I'm sorry."
"That wasn't fair." "No, it was perfectly fair." Junwoo ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she remembered well. "But this isn't about our marriage. This is about Min-ho. A child I didn't know existed while he was growing up right here in Seoul. I was protecting him," Soo-yeon said, moving to adjust a painting that didn't need adjusting. You were so focused on your company's success. The headlines, the business magazines, they all painted you as this driven visionary who sacrificed everything for success. I couldn't bear the thought of Minho being just another sacrifice. That's not fair. You don't know what kind of father I would have been. Don't I? She turned to face him fully. The last 3 months of our marriage, you came home past midnight. You missed dinners, weekends, holidays. You chose board meetings over our anniversary. How could I risk Minho experiencing that kind of disappointment? The truth of her words stung, but anger still bubbled beneath the surface. So you made the choice for both of us. You decided I didn't deserve to know my own son. I made the choice I thought was right at the time. Soo-yeon's voice wavered slightly. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe fear and hurt clouded my judgment. But I can't change the past, Jun-woo. He walked to the window, watching Seoul's traffic flow below. Does he hate me? The question seemed to catch Soo-yeon off guard. No, she said softly. He doesn't hate you. He's curious about you. Sometimes he sits in front of the business channel, watching your interviews. He told me once that you look sad when you smile for the cameras. Jun-woo closed his eyes, remembering Minho's examining gaze at the gala. Out of the mouths of babes, he murmured. He's very perceptive, Soo-yeon agreed. Like you used to be, before the company became everything. The subtle dig didn't go unnoticed. What do we do now? He asked, turning back to face her. I can't unknow this. I can't go back to being the successful CEO who doesn't have a son. No, you can't, she acknowledged. But what are you willing to change? Minho isn't a business acquisition. You can't just add father to your schedule between board meetings and investor calls. You think that's all I'm capable of? I think, she chose her words carefully, that you need to be very sure about what you want. Because if you come into his life now, you can't just leave when things get complicated. He's not a project you can delegate or postpone. The tension in the room shifted as they both realized they were discussing a future neither had imagined possible 24 hours ago. Jun-woo moved closer to the painting of the boy with a kite. I want to know him, he said finally. I want to try. I know I don't deserve it, but I want the chance to be his father. Soo-yeon studied him for a long moment. He has a soccer game this Saturday. He plays midfielder, another thing he got from you. If you're serious, you could come watch. But Jun-woo, her voice hardened slightly. If you do this, you have to be all in. I won't let you break his heart the way you broke mine. The youth soccer field buzzed with weekend activity as Jun-woo parked his car. He'd swapped his usual business suit for casual wear, a decision that had taken him longer than any board meeting preparation. He spotted Minho immediately, running drills with his teammates, his small figure confident and focused. You came, Soo-yeon said, approaching from the sidelines. She held 2 coffee cups, offering him one. He's been looking for you since warm-up started. Jun-woo accepted the coffee, noting it was prepared exactly as he liked it. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed, another message from his mother. When are you going to stop this foolishness and remarry? The text read, the Young family's daughter would be perfect. She has the right background, the right education. He silenced the phone, shoving it in his pocket. His family's disapproval of his divorce from Soo-yeon had morphed into aggressive matchmaking attempts. They didn't understand why he'd remained single, focusing solely on work. Now he wondered if some part of him had been waiting. On the field, Minho scored a goal. His teammates cheered, and he turned toward the sidelines, eyes searching until they found Jun-woo. The smile that spread across his face was painfully familiar. Jun-woo saw it every morning in his mirror. Mr. Lee, a voice interrupted the moment. Park Sang-min, his company's chief operating officer, approached with a tablet in hand. I apologize for disturbing your weekend, but the Singapore merger requires immediate attention. Not now, Sang-min. Jun-woo replied, eyes still on the field. But sir, the board is concerned about the timing. If we don't act now, I said not now. His tone left no room for argument. Sang-min retreated, but not before casting a curious glance at Soo-yeon and Minho. The game proceeded, with Minho displaying an unexpected mix of competitiveness and teamwork. During halftime, he ran to the sidelines, slightly out of breath. "Did you see my goal?" he asked, looking directly at Junwoo. The directness of his gaze, so like his own, caught Junwoo off guard.
I did.
"Your timing was perfect," he managed to reply. Minho beamed, then turned serious. "Mom says you build things. Big buildings and computers and stuff." "I do," Junwoo nodded, crouching to Minho's level. "But right now, I'm more interested in watching you play." The boy's eyes widened slightly, and something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. Then his coach called, and Minho ran back to his team, but not before giving Junwoo another smile. As the second half began, Junwoo's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from the board chairman. Urgent meeting called for 3 p.m. Merger discussions critical. "You should go," Soo-yeon said quietly, having noticed his expression. "We understand." The familiar words, "we understand," hit him hard. How many times had she said that during their marriage? How many times had he chosen work, believing there would always be another game, another moment, another chance? "No," he said firmly, turning off his phone
Completely.
The meeting can wait. Soo-yeon looked surprised, then pleased, though she tried to hide it. They watched the rest of the game in comfortable silence, cheering when Minho's team won. Afterward, as families gathered their children, Minho approached them hesitantly. "Mom says you're busy a lot," he said to Junwoo. "But maybe you could come to my next game too?" The hope in his voice made Junwoo's throat tight. "I'll be there," he promised, knowing the words might change everything: his schedule, his priorities, his carefully constructed life. As they walked to their cars, Junwoo spotted Sangmin watching from the parking lot. The man's expression was calculating, and Junwoo knew rumors would start circulating by Monday. The story of the divorced CEO, his artist ex-wife, and their secret child would be too juicy for Seoul's corporate circles to ignore. But watching Minho climb into Soo-yeon's car, waving goodbye with that familiar smile, Junwoo realized he didn't care about the rumors. For the first time in 5 years, maybe longer, something mattered more than his company's success. The following weeks established a cautious routine. Junwoo attended Minho's soccer games, scheduled lunches when possible, and slowly began learning the details of his son's life. Today, they sat in a family restaurant, Minho enthusiastically explaining his latest school project. "We're studying planets," Minho said, drawing circles on a napkin. "Teacher says Saturn's rings are made of ice and rocks. Is that true?" "It is," Junwoo confirmed, watching his son's careful drawing. "Some scientists think they're pieces of old moons or comets that got caught in Saturn's gravity."
Cool.
Minho looked up, his expression turning serious. "Mom has a lot of pictures of you in her studio drawer. From before. You look different now." The sudden change of topic caught Junwoo off guard. "Different how?" "Sadder," Minho said simply. "Like this morning, when you were looking at your phone. But not now. Now you look like in the pictures." Junwoo set down his chopsticks, struck by his son's perception. "The pictures were from when your mom and I were married. Things were different then. Do you still love her?" The question came with the direct simplicity only children can manage. "Minho," Soo-yeon's warning voice came from behind them as she returned from the restroom. But the question hung in the air, demanding an answer. "It's complicated," Junwoo finally said.
Why?
"Mom says love shouldn't be complicated. She says it's like her paintings, sometimes messy, but always true." Soo-yeon sat down, her face flushed. "Minho, remember what we discussed about personal questions?" "But this isn't personal," Minho protested. "You're my mom, and he's my dad. I want to know if we can be like Jinho's family. They live together and eat breakfast together and go to the park on Sundays." The weight of his words settled over the table. Junwoo looked at Soo-yeon, seeing his own surprise mirrored in her expression. "Minho," Junwoo started carefully. "Relationships between adults are complex. Your mother and I want what's best for you," Soo-yeon finished, reaching for her son's hand. "And right now, that means getting to know each other again as a family, even if it's different from Jinho's family." Minho's lower lip trembled slightly. But I heard you telling Aunt Jiyoon that you miss him sometimes. And Dad keeps the gallery invitation from your first exhibition in his wallet. I saw it when he paid for ice cream last week. Both adults froze. Junwoo's hand instinctively went to his wallet, where the worn invitation had indeed lived for years. Soo-yeon stared at her plate, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her water glass. I just want... Minho's voice wavered. I want us to be together, like a real family. We are a real family, Junwoo said firmly, surprising himself and Soo-yeon. It might not look like other families, but we are real. And we both love you very much. Then why can't you love each other again? The question pierced through their carefully constructed boundaries. Junwoo looked at Soo-yeon, really looked at her, and saw the same questions in her eyes. The same uncertainty. The same lingering feelings they'd both tried to bury under work and art and polite distance. Sometimes, he said slowly, still holding Soo-yeon's gaze, adults need time to figure things out, to fix mistakes, to remember what's important. How much time? Minho asked. I don't know, Junwoo answered honestly. But I do know that I want to try. To be a better father. To be. He hesitated, then continued. To be someone worthy of being part of this family. The following Monday, Junwoo arrived at his office to find Sangmin waiting with a thick folder of documents and a concerned expression. The board is meeting in an hour, Sangmin announced without preamble. Park Jin-suk has presented a proposal questioning your leadership. He's using your recent, personal situation as leverage. Junwoo set his briefcase down calmly. What exactly is he saying? That your involvement with your ex-wife and the boy is affecting company decisions. He cited the delayed Singapore merger, your missed board meeting, and Sangmin paused. He's suggesting that the timing of this revelation is suspicious. That perhaps it's an attempt to manipulate company shares. Manipulation? Junwoo's voice turned cold. My son is not a corporate strategy. Your son? Sangmin's eyebrows rose. So it's true then? Before Junwoo could respond, his phone buzzed. A message from Soo-yeon. Minho's school called. He's in the nurse's office with a fever. I'm stuck at a gallery installation. Can you reschedule the board meeting? Junwoo ordered, already reaching for his coat. Sir, if you leave now, you'll be playing right into Jin-suk's hands. He's been positioning himself as a more dedicated leader, someone without distractions. Junwoo paused at the door. My son has a fever, Sangmin. Everything else can wait. At Minho's school, Junwoo found himself navigating unfamiliar territory. The nurse seemed surprised to see the famous CEO in her office, but Minho's face lit up despite his fever. Dad, he said weakly. You came? The words still felt new, powerful. Of course I came. Junwoo placed a hand on his forehead. You're burning up. Let's get you home. His phone buzzed continuously during the drive to Soo-yeon's apartment. Messages from board members, Sangmin, his assistant. He ignored them all, focusing on Minho's reflection in the rearview mirror. At the apartment, he helped Minho into bed, remembering how his own father had been absent during his childhood illnesses, always too busy with work. The irony wasn't lost on him. Will you stay? Minho asked, small fingers gripping Junwoo's sleeve. Yes, he promised, pulling up a chair. Hours later, Soo-yeon rushed in, her clothes spattered with paint. She stopped short at the sight of Junwoo reading a book to a sleeping Minho. His fever broke an hour ago, Junwoo said quietly. The medicine worked. Thank you, she whispered. I know you probably had important meetings. Nothing more important than this. Their eyes met over Minho's sleeping form, and something shifted in Soo-yeon's expression. The old Junwoo would never have said that. The old Junwoo was a fool. Before she could respond, his phone rang, Sangmin again. This time, he answered. Sir, Park Jin-suk called for a vote of no confidence. The board is split. You need to come in immediately. Soo-yeon, hearing the urgency in Sangmin's voice, touched Junwoo's arm. Go. We'll be fine. He looked at Minho, then back at her. No. I've run away from important things before. Not this time. Into the phone, he said, Sangmin, send me the documents. I'll handle this from here. For the next few hours, Jae Won-woo worked from Soo-yeon's dining table, sending emails, making calls, building his defense. Soo-yeon brought him coffee, then dinner, watching him work with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're different, she finally said. I had to be, he replied, not looking up from his laptop. Our son helped me see that. Our son, she repeated softly. You know, that's the first time you've said it that way. He stopped typing, meeting her gaze. It's what he is, what we are, a family, even if it took me 5 years to understand that. Late that night, after securing enough board support to survive Jin Suk's challenge, Junwoo checked on Minho one last time. The boy slept peacefully, his fever gone. You should go home, Soo-yeon said from the doorway. You've had a long day. I am home, he replied simply, even if I don't deserve to be. 2 months later, the gallery buzzed with pre-exhibition energy. Soo-yeon's newest collection, Reconnections, was set to open in an hour. Workers made final adjustments to lighting while early VIP guests mingled near the entrance. In a private back room, Junwoo helped Minho with his bow tie. Stop fidgeting, he said gently, adjusting the fabric. You look very handsome. Like you? Minho asked, beaming at their matching suits. They'd gone shopping together, Minho insisting on copying his father's style exactly. Even better, Junwoo assured him. Are you ready for your important job tonight?
Minho nodded seriously.
Soo-yeon had appointed him official guest book attendant, a responsibility he took with utmost seriousness. Mom's nervous, he confided. She keeps rearranging the paintings even though they're perfect. Through the door, they could hear Soo-yeon directing staff about lighting angles and champagne service. The sound made Junwoo smile. She'd always been a perfectionist about her shows.
Dad.
Minho's voice turned serious. Are you going to tell Mom tonight? Tell her what? That you love her. I saw the ring box in your office when I visited last week. Junwoo's hand instinctively went to his jacket pocket, where a small velvet box sat heavy with possibility. You're too observant for your own good, he murmured. Is it Grandma's ring? The one you told me about? Yes. The ring had been his grandmother's, then his mother's. After the divorce, his mother had kept it, refusing to accept that her son's marriage was over. Last week, she'd finally given it back, along with her blessing. Mom will like it, Minho said confidently. She likes old things that have stories. Before Junwoo could respond, the door opened and Soo-yeon entered, stunning in a midnight blue dress. She stopped short at the sight of them. My 2 handsome men, she said softly, then caught herself. Minho, the guests are arriving. Ready for your job. Minho hugged them both quickly before running to his post, leaving his parents in charged silence. The collection looks amazing, Junwoo offered. Different from your usual style. Everything's different now, she replied, adjusting a painting that was already perfectly straight. These past few months. Soo-yeon, he started, but she shook her head.
Not now.
I need to focus on the show. Whatever you're going to say, it can wait. But her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her dress, and Junwoo recognized the gesture from years ago, her tell when she was trying to maintain control. The main gallery filled quickly with Seoul's elite. Art critics clustered around certain pieces, murmuring appreciatively. Business leaders who'd once questioned Junwoo's recent choices now watched with keen interest as he moved through the crowd, Minho occasionally running up to whisper something in his ear. The centerpiece of the collection drew the most attention, a large canvas showing 3 distinct silhouettes merged by swirling colors and light. Anyone who knew them could see it was a family portrait, though not a traditional one. It's called Second Chances, Minho told anyone who asked, proud to share his knowledge. Mom says sometimes you have to break something to build it better. As the evening progressed, Junwoo noticed Soo-yeon growing more anxious. She kept glancing at him, then away, as if expecting something. The weight of the ring box seemed to grow heavier with each passing minute. Mom's waiting, Minho whispered during one of his check-ins. She keeps looking at the clock. How do you know she's waiting for anything? Junwoo asked, amused by his son's certainty. Because she has the same face she had when she was waiting to tell you about me. Scared but hoping. The gallery lights dimmed slightly, signaling the exhibition's formal presentation. Soo-yeon moved to the center of the room, her hands clasped tightly together. The crowd gathered, expectant. This was usually when she would give her artist's statement, explaining the inspiration behind her work. Junwoo stood at the back, the ring box now burning in his pocket. Minho pressed against his side, vibrating with barely contained excitement. Thank you all for coming tonight, Soo-yeon began, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. This collection represents a journey, one of rediscovery, forgiveness, and... She paused, her eyes finding Junwoo's in the crowd. Hope. The audience murmured appreciatively, but Junwoo barely heard them. He was remembering another gallery opening 12 years ago, where he'd first met Soo-yeon. She'd been just as nervous then, just as beautiful. Art, like life, rarely follows our planned path, she continued. Sometimes we must destroy our original canvas to create something more meaningful. Sometimes what we think is an ending becomes. Her voice faltered as the gallery doors burst open. Kim Tae-sung, Junwoo's former business partner, strode in. The same man who tried to orchestrate a hostile takeover 5 years ago, during the worst days of Junwoo and Soo-yeon's marriage. Sorry to interrupt, Tae-sung announced, his voice carrying across the now silent gallery. But I believe there's something the audience should know about our celebrated artist and her inspiration. Minho gripped Junwoo's hand tightly. Dad, that's the man from the photos. The one who used to make Mom cry. Junwoo's blood ran cold. What photos? The ones in Mom's studio drawer. From when you were away in Singapore. She looks sad in all of them, and he's always standing too close. The pieces started falling into place. The timing of their separation, Tae-sung's sudden interest in the company's art investments, Soo-yeon's reluctance to speak about certain periods of their marriage. I believe, Tae-sung continued, pulling out an envelope. These documents will interest everyone. Especially you, Junwoo. Did you never wonder why your wife was so eager to end things? Why she disappeared so completely after the divorce? Soo-yeon had gone pale, her hands gripping the podium. The audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. Or perhaps, Tae-sung smiled coldly. You'd like to know who really orchestrated your company's near collapse that year? Who provided the information that almost destroyed everything you'd built? Stop, Soo-yeon's voice cut through the whispers. Please, not here. Not now. But Junwoo was already moving forward, placing himself between Tae-sung and the audience. Minho followed, small face set in determination. Whatever you're planning, Junwoo said quietly, remember there's a child present. My son. Tae-sung's smile widened. Are you sure about that? Have you seen a DNA test? Or did you just assume, like you assumed your wife was faithful while you built your empire? The gasps from the audience were cut short by an unexpected voice. I know who my dad is, Minho declared clearly, his young voice carrying in the shocked silence. And I know what you did. I heard Mom telling Aunt Ji-yoon about how you tried to make her spy on Dad's company. How you threatened to hurt Dad's career if she didn't help you. She has the emails you sent and the recordings. Tae-sung's face drained of color. Soo-yeon stepped forward, wrapping an arm around Minho. I kept everything, she said quietly. Every threat, every manipulation. I was too scared to use them then, too afraid of what you do. But I'm not scared anymore. The audience erupted in whispers. Several prominent business figures were already on their phones, no doubt spreading the news through Seoul's corporate circles. You're lying, Tae-sung sputtered, but his confidence was cracking. No, came a new voice. Park Sang-min stepped forward from the crowd. She's not. I've been building a case against you for months. Tonight was supposed to be the final proof we needed, seeing if you'd take the bait and show up with your so-called evidence. The gallery fell silent as Sang-min produced a file from his briefcase. These are the real documents, showing how Tae-sung attempted to manipulate both the company and your marriage. He wanted control of both Junwoo, the company through financial manipulation, and Soo-yeon through blackmail. Taesung backed toward the door, but security guards, quietly positioned earlier by Sangmin, blocked his exit. You see, Sangmin continued, when you started spending more time with Minho, I investigated why Soo-yeon had kept him hidden for so long. The trail led back to Taesung's threats. He'd convinced her that if she told you about the pregnancy, he would reveal her unwitting role in his corporate espionage scheme. Junwoo turned to Soo-yeon, understanding dawning. The Singapore trip. When I wouldn't take your calls. I was trying to warn you, she whispered. About Taesung's plans, about the baby, about everything. But he had already convinced you I was working against the company's interests. That's why you stopped trusting me. Minho, still holding both his parents' hands, looked up at them. Is that why you were afraid to tell Dad about me, Mom? Because of him? Soo-yeon knelt before her son, tears in her eyes. I was afraid of many things, sweetheart. Afraid your father wouldn't believe me about Taesung's threats. Afraid he'd think you weren't his. Afraid of destroying the company he'd worked so hard to build. But you're not afraid anymore? Minho asked. No, she smiled, glancing at Junwoo. Not anymore. The security guards were now leading a protesting Taesung away. Sangmin approached with more documents. The board has already been briefed, he said. All charges will be filed in the morning. The company's reputation will take a hit, but showing how we uncovered and dealt with corporate espionage will ultimately strengthen public trust. But Junwoo wasn't listening anymore. He was looking at the painting behind Soo-yeon, Second Chances, seeing it with new understanding. The three silhouettes, once broken apart, now swirled together in a dance of color and light. 5 years, he said softly. 5 years of thinking you'd betrayed me, when you were actually protecting our family. And 5 years of letting you think that, Soo-yeon replied, because I believed it was the only way to keep Minho safe from Taesung's influence. Minho tugged at his father's sleeve. Dad, the thing in your pocket. I think now's a good time. The remaining audience members, who had been pretending not to listen, gave up all pretense of disinterest. Junwoo reached into his jacket, fingers closing around the velvet box. I had a speech prepared, he said, his voice carrying in the quiet gallery, about second chances and rebuilt trust. But now I understand that trust was never really broken, just tested, bent, and ultimately made stronger. He opened the box, revealing his grandmother's ring. This ring has been in my family for 3 generations. My mother kept it after our divorce, saying she was just holding it until I came to my senses. Soo-yeon's hands flew to her mouth as he knelt. I'm not asking you to marry me again, he said clearly. I'm asking if we can build something new, something honest and open, with our son at its center. Something that honors both what we lost and what we found again. Before Soo-yeon could respond, Minho stepped forward. Mom, remember what you told me about your art? How sometimes you have to break something to build it better. Soo-yeon laughed through her tears, looking at their son, this perfect blend of them both, who had somehow inherited not just their features, but their capacity for hope. Yes, she said, first to Minho, then to Junwoo. Yes to building something new. Yes to our family. Yes to everything. As applause erupted in the gallery, Minho hugged them both, and Junwoo realized that sometimes the greatest art isn't hanging on a wall. It's in the masterpiece of a family redesigning itself, choosing love over fear, truth over assumptions, and the courage to begin again.
The end.